So let's continue. The next law of motion, which is called law of acceleration. Newton's first law of motion states that if no net force acting on an object, the velocity of the object does not change. So, kung walang net force acting on an object, ang velocity then ng object does not change. When there is a net force, how does the velocity of the object change? Suppose you are on a trip with your family. Then suddenly, the car, tong illustration na to, ran out of gas and stopped. You need to push it like this, to the side of the road. The car is moved faster when you and other members of the family pushed it together. This shows that the greater force you apply, the faster will the car accelerate. So, if more push, the car will reach the same velocity faster. The acceleration is in the direction of the net force. So, this is our figure. As you can see, kung ipupush natin ng greater, anong mangyayari? Ang force ay greater din. At saka, ang acceleration ng car will also, anong mangyayari? Will also be faster. Okay. So, the relationship of the physical quantities, we have three physical quantities that is involved in the law of acceleration. And these are force, mass, and acceleration, are stated in our second law of motion, or the law of acceleration. So, the statement for the law of acceleration, kindly check your module, baka may error. So, let's change it to this statement instead. It says, the acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the net force. Ito po, acceleration is directly proportional to the net force acting on the object and inversely proportional, itong nasa baba, to the mass of the object. So, we can make statements after this based on our law of acceleration. So, in symbol, okay, we have acceleration, directly proportional to force and inversely proportional to mass. So, in equation, if we are going to make an equation of this, if we are going to find the net force, we will have mass times acceleration. Okay? So, meaning net external force is equal to mass times or multiplied by acceleration. So, this is an example. A table shows unit of mass, acceleration, and force. Ano bang mga units ng mass, ng acceleration, at saka ng force? Okay. So, we have here, if our mass is in kilogram and our acceleration is in meter per second squared, so our force will become, because we are going to multiply mass and acceleration, so we will have kilogram times meter per second squared. And that is equivalent to Newton. Okay, on the other hand, if we have mass in gram and the acceleration is in centimeter per second squared, so gram times centimeter per second squared is equivalent to dyne. So these are our units for our three physical quantities involved in Newton's second law of motion. So, let's have more examples. In example 1, meron po tayo sa baba, may illustration tayo dito sa baba. So, you just later, parang look at the illustration in your module while I am explaining. So, for example number 1, a small net force produces less acceleration. Okay. Again, kung maliit lang yung net force, ano mangyayari sa acceleration? Maliit din yung acceleration. The net force equal to 10 Newton east is the sum of 20 Newton and negative 10 Newton. So, kung i-add po natin ang 20 Newton at saka negative 10 Newton, the net force will be 10 Newton. So, the two forces are deducted from each other since the two forces are in an opposite direction. Okay? In example 1B, based on our illustration below, look at below of your module, a big net force produces greater acceleration. The net force equal to 40 Newton east is the difference between ang result po, ito pong net force na 40 Newton ay base po sa 80 Newton east and 40 Newton west. Iba-iba po to na forces. May force 1 going to east at saka may force na going to west. So, again, kung going to east po tayo, positive po yung force. If it's going to west, negative din. So, the equivalent force will be positive Newton east. Okay. So, if you are going to look at our illustration, ito po, so, kanina, sa east going to east po at saka going to west, since ang east ay positive at ang west ay negative, so positive po ang result kasi mas malaki yung east. While, in our second example, this part here, ang going to east ay malaki din at saka going to west ay maliit. So, if you are going to get the net force, positive ang result, tapos east siya. So, every time we have a positive result, we are going to use the direction, a positive direction. Okay. So, let's proceed to example number 2. In example number 2, a uniform net force of 10, okay, 20 Newton east and 10 Newton west produces a greater acceleration on a lighter mass and less acceleration on a heavier mass. So, mas malaki ang acceleration kung magaan yung object. Pero, less din ang acceleration if mabigat ang object. Okay. So, in example 2A, a uniform net force acting on the crater with less mass produces greater acceleration. Example B, a uniform net force acting on the crater with a bigger mass produces less acceleration. Diba kanina, we have discussed about the statement of the law of acceleration na ang acceleration is directly proportional. So, kung mag-i-increase ang acceleration, mag-i-increase din ang ating force. Okay? Pero, ang acceleration ay inversely proportional sa mass. So, kung i-increase ang acceleration, kaya decrease yung mass or lesser yung mass. Kung lesser yung acceleration, ang mass ay heavier. Yun. Kasi inversely proportional yung acceleration at saka yung mass. Okay. So, in the preceding examples, the equation that relates acceleration to the net force applied and to the mass of the moving object is, ito na. So, as you can see, directly proportional ang acceleration at saka force and inversely proportional ang acceleration at saka ang mass. So, example number 2, ito yung nangyayari sa example number 2 kanina. Ang east natin ay 20 Newton, tapos ang west natin ay 10 Newton. Remember, going to west, negative yan. So, 20 plus negative 10, the remaining is positive 10n, and you are going to use the positive direction that is east. So, ganon. Okay, so let's proceed to where acceleration, itong symbol na to ay ang acceleration at saka ang meter per second square ay ang ating net force, which is in Newton. Okay, I mean the acceleration, ito pa po yung unit niya at saka yung net force ay N, at saka yung M is the mass in kilogram. The symbol, this one, shows the relationship. It's an alpha Greek alphabet to, okay, relationship of acceleration to net force and to mass. So I've explained it further, so let's proceed. Acceleration can be an increase or decrease in speed. Okay. A change in direction or both. So, pwede mag-increase ang speed, nag-accelerate tayo, nagde-decrease din ang speed, nagde-decelerate, pero acceleration pa rin yun, pero in deceleration form, and change in direction or both. This can be demonstrated in a situation when a driver presses the gas pedal. If you have driven a car or a motorcycle, and or uses a steering wheel of the vehicle, okay, the speed increases when the gas pedal is pressed and decreases when the brake is pressed. Okay. On the other hand, direction changes when the steering wheel is turned to the left and turned to the right. Okay. So, friction may affect the acceleration of the body. Friction is a realistic force. May tinatawag tayo na frictional force. It's between the surface that are in contact. So, sa surface ng ating ground, may friction dyan, together with the contact of the wheel of the vehicle or of the object. And it is created whenever two surfaces moved or try to move across each other. Okay. So, may mga facts tayo dito. Did you know? May mga safety seats for children and so forth and so on. So, just read it later. Okay, let's move forward. Newton's second law can also be applied to objects moving in uniform circular motion. So, kung may circular motion, may the Newton's second law can also be applied. So, force that pulls the object towards the center of the circle, which is known as the centripetal force, is equal to the product of the object's mass and its acceleration. So, it can be expressed as the same as our formula for the law of acceleration, pero centripetal force lang ang gamit, ito din. So, force, F, centripetal force, is equivalent to mass times centripetal acceleration. Okay. So, ganun din ang gamit. Okay, let's proceed. When objects fall to the ground, their acceleration would be the same, although they have different masses. This is true if other forces like air resistance are not considered. So, when it's vertical, kapag nangyayari yan, ibig sabihin, may acceleration din. Pero, based on the gravitational force. This is true if other forces like air resistance are not considered. According to Newton's second law, ito, so ang acceleration natin is equivalent to gravity. Na-mention natin kanina na ang gravity, the constant gravity is equivalent to 9.8 meter per second. So, yan, ito po. So, ito yung constant gravity. So, force or the net force is equivalent to gravitational force, which is equivalent to mass times gravity. Kasi we will not use any other value for acceleration except the constant gravity na 9.8 kapag vertical ang nangyayari. Okay. So, the gravitational force is proportional to the mass of the body. So, the greater the force, or the greater the mass, the greater the force, and vice versa. So, if you double the mass, kung magdo-double ang mass natin, the force also doubles. Diba? Because it is directly proportional. Kung magdo-double ang mass natin, magdo-double ang force. Comparing the acceleration of the two masses, so we have ito. So, force over mass is equivalent to the gravity. And then, dalawang force at saka dalawang mass is equal to gravity din. This will result to the same acceleration, the gravity. Okay. So, we have more problem solving involved in the law of acceleration, the second law of Isaac Newton. Okay, so here is an example. This is our illustration. What do you think will happen if a 50-kilogram cabinet, ito po yung cabinet, is pushed by a man with a force of 200 Newton? So, ang force po ng tao ay is equivalent to 200 Newton. If friction between the cabinet and the floor is not considered, hindi natin i-consider yung friction, what is the acceleration of the cabinet? So, the given are the following. Ang mass ng cabinet ay 50. Ang force ng tao ay 200 Newton or 200 kilogram times meter per second squared. So, anong hahanapin natin? What are we going to find out? It's what is the acceleration. So, we are going to use our formula. A is equal to F or net force over mass or the M. So, 200, gagamitan natin ng unit na ito so that we can cancel later. 200 i-divide po natin sa 50. Ang result po ay, okay, 4 na lang. So, cancel. The remaining units will be meter per second squared. That would be the acceleration of that cabinet based on the applied force of the man. So, the acceleration for meter per second squared is the same as 4 meter per second, which means that the cabinet speed increases by 4 meter per second every second. Okay, we're done with the second law of motion, and that is the law of